forgiven of my sins and won the victory. A victory in Jesus, my Savior, forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew Him, and all my love is due. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about His healing, of His cleansing power revealing, how He made the lame to walk again and caused the blind to see. And then I cried, dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit. And somehow Jesus came and brought to me the victory. A victory in Jesus, my Savior, forever. His redeeming blood, He loved me ere I knew Him, and all my love is due. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about a mansion He has built for me, and I heard about the streets of gold beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing in the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing up there the song of victory. A victory in Jesus, my Savior, forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew Him, and all my love is due. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood.
All right, good to be here tonight. This time I'd like to know if anybody's got a prayer request or testimony on their heart.
Can't remember Joshua Bacon, the prayer, but I'll deal with that. I can't remember his Aunt Tracy, John Cutler, Brother Hill, and she did. I can't remember my sister-in-law, how that good news she had, and, remember my family. Remember Melody, Tandy, she made the trip up her own family, that was good. Just thank the Lord for that. Continue to remember my family for the health issues they have. God will take care of them. Just thank the Lord for being here tonight.
Amen. Remember this. Somebody else.
I'd like for the church to remember me and my family, and especially my daughter and my granddaughter.
Amen.
She has surgery in a couple of weeks from monitoring. Her grandson, remember them, they'll be traveling. The youngest guy, Tyler, him and his wife are headed to London Friday. They're going to spend so many days in Scotland and so many days in England.
Oh, right, what is Kentucky? That's the London I go to.
Yes. And the other boy is going to just outside of Calgary, Canada, in a couple of days, next week. So, both boys will be traveling, and remember them and my brother-in-law, and those that we have on our prayer list. We just want to thank you for blessing us, watching over us, giving us help.
Amen. Somebody else. Yes, ma'am. Somebody else?
I'd like church to remember us, Teresa, getting us with the pain, visiting us with the heart problems. This church would be in prayer for that. Remember me at work, remember mom, kids and grandkids, you, brothers and mom, and both sisters, we've got some issues as well. Remember Brittany, of course, and Leah. That's about everybody.
Right. Yes, sir. All right, all right. There it is. Somebody else?
Just thank God for being here tonight, just for all his blessings. Just for what he's done and what he's gonna do. An each practitioner yesterday did order a stress test, apparently the EKG yesterday showed something, and they're gonna try to get to the bottom of this shortness of breath. So, I'm actually gonna walk on the treadmill, so you always pray that you can make it through that, because I don't know if I can or not, so. I know God can give me the strength to do it, but hopefully they can figure out what's going on, because it's not all just this, it's something's going on. So, it's taken them 5 years to figure this out. So, but anyway, I just thank him for what he's already done. And I've got another health issue that's gonna get worked on as well, and you all just pray that that will go good as well.
Amen. Amen. There it is. Somebody else?
And Brother Jim, if I live through tomorrow, I've been blessed with 63 years. So yes. Yes, so I am old.
So you're officially Scott's old lady, right?
I'm his old
That's
No, he's my old man.
right, that's right.
But I do thank God for the many years that he's given me. My
Amen.
sister passed away at 48. So I consider these years a blessing,
Amen.
a true blessing.
It is. It is. Somebody else?
I like to pray for my brothers. Most of them have cancer of some kind. And I just like to keep them in prayer.
Amen. Amen. It is. Somebody else?
I'm thankful that Deacon Greg will be with us tonight, unexpectedly, so that's, into the prayer, just continue to pray that God will make a way for us to deliver them to his house.
Amen. Amen. It is. Somebody else?
They were desolate there as well. They'll be traveling this weekend, so just pray for their safe travels.
Amen. It is. Somebody else? Anything else? That's continue to remember my family in prayer. Continue to remember all our missionaries. Brother Pierce will be heading out west. I'm going to text from him today. He's going by himself this time, so pray for him that he has safe travels. He will help out that way. Continue to remember all the sick in the church and her issues, doctors and insurance and all those things that are helping for Summer Hudson, and Tanya. Also remember Brother Gary and Sharon. Brother Gary's having some pretty bad issues now. They're worried he's losing a lot of blood. They're going to have to remove his prostate. They might be doing that tomorrow. And so again, a lot of these issues he's dealing with, they wouldn't have found if they weren't in that car wreck. They didn't know any of that stuff. But he's having a hard time right now. He's in the hospital in Lexington. So remember him. Still remember Sharon as well. She can't be there with him. She's got to have surgery on her, both I believe both ankles. I can't remember Miss Edwina, their family, with all the stuff they're dealing with. again, we're all sick of the church, we're Mike and his family. Remember, I mentioned a friend of mine, Sean, at work, his dad passed away last week. They are, him and his brother in Florida this week to try to get everything taken care of there and get all that, all those issues resolved. He was cremated, not having a service for him, but remember him, he was taking it, pretty hard on Monday of last week, so, as could be expected, but he's not the kind of guy that takes stuff hard very often. So that, I do remember him and his family. Again, we've got a lot to pray about. We remember our country, looking forward to, celebrate this year 249 years as a country. That's pretty good. That's almost as old as Brother Porter back there, isn't it, Brother Porter? Brother Porter remembers that. He was right underneath John Hancock, so Porter Honeycutt. So, we're looking forward to that. Again, we're grateful for the God allowing us to be born in this country. I know the folks say, well, you don't bring that stuff to the church. I'm grateful for that. I think any blessing you get, I'll be thankful for. And God blessed us to be born. If you've been born in this country, you're born in the greatest country on the face of the earth. And I don't care what anybody else said. I know they quit teaching that, and they quit pushing that, and that's part of the problem we got. But I think we're going to push it. You know, ingrain that in your kids that this is a great country. We're flawed like anybody else. Just like there's some great people, but we're all flawed, right? This is a great country that's got flaws. All right, that's what we've got the ability to fix those flaws and correct those things. And, but I'm glad of that. I appreciate again him allowing me to be born here. I could have been born in a third world country, not knowing anything about the Bible, not knowing anything about God, not knowing anything about freedom. And God has blessed me to have that, and I'm grateful for it tonight. So remember that this weekend. And I know it's we call it the 4th of July because it's celebrating on the July 4th, but it's Independence Day. We're celebrating that, and I'm grateful for that. I'm hoping we're raising another generation that'll still be proud of that and be grateful for it. And, our fault. We ought to somebody try to take that out of them. We ought to put it in them even harder. But I'm glad again that the Lord allowed me to be born in this country. To the parents that I had, I'm grateful for that. And again, we've got a lot to pray about. And again, continue to remember the country. Ronald Reagan said we're one generation away from our freedom is one generation away from extinction. It doesn't take all it takes, and we see that now how close it is to that. Folks would be willing to give up all these freedoms for a little bit of safety, a little bit of protection, let the government take care of them. I'd rather have to work hard. I'd rather have to work twice as hard and have my freedom than not have to work hard and let the government take care of them. And but I'm glad tonight again that the Lord. I won't get into. I won't start singing the national anthem up here, but we ought to be grateful that the Lord put us here, and not a better place He could have put us. So I'm grateful for that tonight. So remember one another again. Remember Joseph Kevin's oldest, Andrew. He's got some vocal cord issues. Nothing shouldn't be tragic or anything. He should be getting it taken care of. Remember him. Again, a lot to pray about. Let's just remember one another, and continue to remember the church in your prayers. Continue to remember the young lady that was here that had been back. So remember her in your prayers. All right. Nobody else has anything? We'll take the unspoken request up with the right hand. Let's get right with gather in the altar. Ask Brother Porter if he would lead us to the Lord in prayer.
Father, I thank you for this another day, Lord, you did. Thank you for all the blessings you did. Thank you for the mercy you granted.
Lord, we love you tonight. We thank you for the opportunity to be here. Lord, we thank you for all that you've done tonight, Lord, and what you've done for us. Lord, we thank you for mercy and grace that you show us tonight. Lord, we thank you for honor and privilege that you give us to be born in this country tonight, Lord. Again, grateful for that, Lord. We ask you tonight, Lord.
Lord, remember all those who come tonight, we pray. Lord,
Lord, we ask you tonight, Lord, that you just be staying in touch with us. Thank you for making lots of plays tonight, Lord. Thank you for that tonight, Lord. Thank you to reach down and touch, Lord. granddaughter, Lord, that has to issues. And then the surgery coming up, Lord, we ask you to protect the Lord. And we ask you to protect the grandsons and their families as they travel tonight, Lord. Bless them with safe travels there and back, Lord, just ask you to touch them and take care of them tonight, Lord. We ask you to bless their brother-in-law and son-in-law tonight, Lord. We ask you to touch them and take care of them tonight, Lord. Just Lord, watch over and protect them, Lord. Take care of the needs that they've got, Lord. Just take care of them and touch them tonight, Lord. We ask you to touch Miss Scott, Miss Teresa tonight, Lord. We ask you to bless them. Lord, touch them and answer their requests tonight, Lord. We ask you to touch their health, Lord. Ask you to protect them. Lord, touch Scott's request tonight, Lord. Touch their job situation. Touch family that's looking for job, Lord. Touch his mom and sisters and mother-in-law and nephews, and Lord, just touch them. And Lord, just touch Leah tonight, Lord. Lord, that you just touch them and take care of the needs they've got. Lord, yes, you touch the streets and her health issues tonight, Lord. Just bless her and touch her job situation. Touch the ones that be traveling tonight, Lord. Just touch them and touch again all those that they mentioned tonight, Lord, that they need to cover, Lord. Touch their families tonight, Lord. Just deal with them, Lord, that they have great anxiety in their hearts, Lord. Lord, just draw them closer to you tonight, Lord. Ask you to touch their children, touch them, touch their needs. Your lady that she will be able to touch her, Lord. Just deal with her, Lord, that she might get back in your house tonight, Lord. Ask you to touch the Lord and Miss Diana tonight, Lord. Touch their health. Lord, reach down and touch them tonight, Lord. Bless them, strengthen them. Lord, just again, have your way in that tonight, Lord. Touch Curtin tonight, Lord. Touch Josh and Megan. Everything tonight, Lord, we ask you to deal with them, Lord, that they might be saved. Lord, we ask you to touch Amanda tonight, Lord. Bless her, get better, Lord. Take care of her needs. Lord, we know you're able to do that tonight. Lord, we ask you to bless him tonight, Lord. Just give him the help that he needs. Lord, take care of Miss Diana tonight, Lord. Lord, send help this direction tonight, Lord. Lord, just he would have to do everything tonight. Lord, we ask you to touch him. Lord, we ask you to bless Miss Diana's brother tonight, Lord. Just take care of tonight, Lord. Just take it away. Lord, bless her again, Lord. Touch her, strengthen her, Lord. Just bless her to get better. Take care of her ears tonight, Lord. Take care of the dialysis issues, Lord. Just touch her mind tonight, Lord. Clear that up. And Lord, just take care of the needs there. Lord, we ask you tonight, Lord, that you touch Lord, the kids tonight, Lord, we ask you to touch them in their job situation. Lord, bless them and touch them tonight. Protect them and everywhere in their lives tonight, Lord. And God, direct them in everything that they do. Lord, we ask you to touch Summer Benson tonight, Lord. Take care of the things she's got coming up, Lord. Bless her as you call into place, Lord, tonight, Lord. Lord, we ask you to touch him and touch his health tonight, Lord. Touch the car situation, Lord. Get that taken care of, Lord. We ask you tonight, Lord, that you bless again, King Chris, Lord, touch him and their job situation there, Lord, touch their health and their insurance and doctor issues, Lord. We ask you to touch them and take care of that tonight. Lord, we know you're able to do that. Lord, just bless him, Lord, just that you might get glory from it tonight, Lord. Those that you request prayer for, Lord, ask you to touch them. And Lord, we ask you to touch Brother Gary tonight, Lord. Just touch him, heal him, Lord. Take care of the needs there, Lord. I know you're able to take care of that, Lord. Watch over and protect him, Lord. Strengthen him. Touch his Sharon tonight, Lord. Heal her. Lord, take care of their needs. Touch her family tonight, Lord. Ask you to bless them, Lord. Touch them and strengthen them tonight, Lord. Lord, just provide for them that they have a place that they can get back to their home tonight, Lord. We know you're able to do that tonight. We just ask you tonight, Lord, that you reach that and touch them, Lord. You bless them, Lord. Touch Andrew tonight, Lord. Bless him to get better, Lord. Touch Leah and Lily and their issues tonight, Lord. Just bless them. And we ask you tonight, Lord, that you touch all of our missionaries tonight and bless them, strengthen them. Brother Pierce, as he travels, Lord, just bless him, Lord, every way in his life, Lord. My children protect them. Take care of all the needs that they have tonight, Lord. We ask you to touch Sean and his family tonight, Lord. Touch them, strengthen them tonight, Lord. Just watch over and protect them as you travel back. Have your way in that, Lord. We ask you to touch Mike tonight and his family, his mom and mother-in-law and his wife tonight, Lord. Touch them and their health, Lord. Ask you to have your way in their lives tonight, Lord. We know you're able to take care of that need. Lord, those that have needs that we don't know about tonight, we ask you to take care of them, Lord. We ask you again, Lord, we thank you again for selling the house, Lord, tonight, Lord. We're grateful for that. And we ask you tonight, Lord, that you take care of the other needs that you got, Lord, that you just make a way that we get things taken up and taken care of tonight, Lord, and we get some of those things off our plate tonight. Lord, we ask you to reach them, touch every way in that. And we ask you tonight, Lord, again, that you bless our country, Lord, just bless us to be what you have it to be tonight, Lord. Lord, I ask you tonight, Lord, that you bless the service that we're going to do tonight, Lord. Every way and everything is said and done. Lord, thank you ahead of time for answering these prayers in Jesus' precious name. Amen. All right. Good to be here tonight. We should be up and running on the internet. All that's up and running now. Got that resolved. Cameras are up, so y'all do something you ain't supposed to do. I'll catch it on the camera now. Miss Diana breaks the speed limit going down that ramp with that walker. We're going to catch her. We'll call the police on her. Again, good to be here tonight. Appreciate all those that are here. Appreciate the wonderful weather that we've had this morning. It was nice. I got up this morning, it was 62 degrees and 62, 64. I ain't seen that in a while. Hey, I appreciate that. Y'all again for some preaching tonight. I got a bunch of waters up here. You guys are in trouble now. Yeah, it was nice getting up in the morning. Didn't have to. I thought maybe it's getting a little close. Had to put the heat on. As I get older, that 60 degrees gets a little chilly out. I didn't wear a hoodie or anything like that, but it was good. It wasn't 87 degrees at 4:30 in the morning. So you know it's going to be hot when you get to that point. When it's in the 80s and 90s as you get up in the morning to get ready to head to work. So again, good to be here. We are appreciative of the Lord's goodness and His mercy and all that He has done for us. We are in Psalm chapter 23, verse number 3, 4. All right. I didn't do my due diligence and back that up there. So. All right, verse number 4. That's right. We got one extra last week that it didn't. 4, right? Say 4. Starting up 4, yeah. Okay. All right. That's what we got here. So. We appreciate the Lord's goodness. We're grateful for all He has done. I believe we ought to be the most grateful people on the planet. Not just as an American, we ought to be grateful for that, but we ought to saved people ought to be the most grateful people on the planet. And that goes for wherever you're from. I don't care if you're born here or not. If you're saved, you ought to be the most grateful people on the planet, because it doesn't matter what goes on down here, because this is going to wind up someday. One of these days, we're excited. We got, like I said, I can look out, and I've got the background on my phone is the sunset at the back of the house. It's got all the trees, and I've got that on there. And I look out there every night. I'm just grateful for that, and I'm excited, and I'm thankful for that. But one of these days, that's going to wrap up. I won't have that anymore. I won't be here. As much as I like where we're at, I'm going to a better place than that. As much as I like cutting grass, I'm going to a place I don't have to cut grass. We ain't going to have to do anything. We're going to have eternal joy. Eternal joy. Not going to get tired. Not going to have to drive somewhere and worry if we're going to stay awake the whole time. Not going to have to worry about if you're hurting. Not going to have to worry about going to doctors and getting things fixed. We don't have any of those problems. And so as a saved person, we ought to be the most grateful people in the world, because any problems we got down here are temporary. They're just going to get gooder, right? We're not going to take all those problems with us. And they say all the time, you can't take it with you, right? I saw you used to have a bumper sticker somewhere that said, the one that dies with the most toys wins. And somebody put a bumper sticker on the other side of the car and said, that's not true. You can't take it with you. And you can't take it with you. And then I saw a t-shirt that had a guy that had a hearse from the funeral home and had a U-Haul trailer attached to it. And somebody said, well, maybe you can take it with you. And we don't take, not only do we not take the stuff we have, but we ain't taking the problems with us. We're not taking the pain. We're not taking any of that. And again, we ought to just, I'm telling you, we'll just take some time to be grateful and take some time to be thankful for the Lord and how good He is to us. And we had some conversations today that kind of broke my heart with some things that people that supposed to be men of God and people trusted. And listen, I don't take this position lightly. I think it's a serious position. Folks look to the preacher and look to the pastor, and not just the pastor, but preachers in general look to them and for guidance. And I don't take that lightly. That if somebody trusts you and somebody looks to you and you let them down, I take that seriously. I think that is I'm glad it's few and far between, but I personally know preachers that have done things that are just wicked and ungodly and abandoned their churches, abandoned their families, and ran off and just everything that they stood for just out the window. And what that does is when you do that, somebody that got, well, I wonder if I'm even saved. I'm wondering if you got saved, I don't care who it was doing the preaching. If you got saved, you got saved. It don't matter what happens to them down the road. They can change and backslide and get wicked and ungodly. And I promise you this: if they were saved, God's going to deal with them. They're going to get theirs, and they're going to have a world of hurt. They're going to have a world of trouble that's going to come on them for that. I can't live for them. I can't live for what they did and those things. But we can live the way God told us to, and I believe we're going to take that serious. There are people that are lost that are looking at us. They may not tell you that, but they're watching you. You slip up one time, and I promise you, that lost person that you don't know is watching you, they're going to remind you that you slipped up. And so we ought to take this thing seriously. And again, it breaks my heart. I get a little bit aggravated with folks that are supposed to be men of God and women of God that just turn their back on Him and do things, and hypocrites. And if I'm going to stand up here and preach to you about not drinking, and you find beer cans falling out of my truck, there's something wrong with that. There's something. Matter of fact, if you go out to one of my vehicles and you find beer cans falling out of it, you get the deacons together, call an emergency meeting, and vote me out. All right, that's what needs to be done. That ain't right. That's not right. And when you see people doing that, it irritates me. And I believe it's not only does it irritate me, but it's not pleasing to God either. All right, verse number 1, we saw the proclamation. It's that powerful. It's powerful. It's personal. In verse number 2, we saw the provisions, the peaceful and pacifying. Verse number 3, we saw the picking and the pointing. In verse number 3, verse number 4, we're going to see here. Verse number 4, we see the perils of life. In verse number 4, the first part of that. He said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me." Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. All right. He said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." And again, down here, the Bible said it's appointed once unto man to die, and after this the judgment. There's an appointed time for every one of us that we're going to face death if the Lord doesn't come back before then. All right. We understand that, and I mentioned this before. We talked to folks at work that didn't have any idea that the Bible even talks about this thing again. They assumed that the world was always going to go on, and there's still people that believe that the world's going to always continue to go on. And I believe if I thought that the world was just going to continue forever, I might be one of them tree huggers and worry about the things that we're doing and worry about the fuel and all. I don't know if I'd ever be a tree hugger, but it just all that craziness that goes on. Mother Earth, and they worship the planet. And listen, we're not going to do anything. We don't have the ability to destroy this planet. People say, what about all the nuclear weapons? And listen, we can fire every single one of them, and we can't destroy this planet. All right? It'd be a mess. It'd be hard to inhabit it, but we're not going to destroy this thing. All right? God's going to do that. He's going to take care of that. He's going to be the one that does that. And so I don't worry about it. Again, I think you're lazy if you don't take the garbage and put it in the can, and you start throwing trash around and just think it looks bad. I don't think it's going to destroy the planet. All right, you got a bunch of knotheads that tell you that stuff, and global warming and climate change and all that craziness. And as I said, climate's always changing. It changes 4 times a year, and it's done it from the beginning of time, and it ain't going to change until He comes back. All right, and so I'm glad that the perils of life. He said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. All right, we look around, and if you watch the news, and I try not to watch a whole lot of that, and I'm real careful which one I watch and which one I listen to. But if you watch the news and you take it to heart, most of the time you'd be afraid to get out of your house. Every time you turn around, you hear about somebody being shot and somebody being stabbed, or somebody, that somebody's attacking somebody, and boy, we need everybody's going to have bomb shelters and everything else. And listen, we've got it good. There's some countries that in Israel, they'll be walking down the street, and all of a sudden they hear the siren. They got to go find somewhere to hide because there's missiles coming in. And God's been good to us, man. We've not had to deal with that over here, and I pray that we don't have to deal with that. But as you get up in the morning, and I was listening to somebody the other day, they were talking about first time they went to Israel, they were amazed at it. I think when you turn 18, whether you're a boy, a man, or woman, and when you turn 18, you got to spend 2 or 4 years in the military. You don't have a choice. You go to college after you're done, but when you turn 18, you got at least 2 years in the military. And he said there's 18-year-old girls walking around with AK-47 strapped to their backs, walking around getting coffee. They're in line getting coffee. And it was strange to him because he doesn't see that. We don't see that over here. All right? You might know them, but you don't most of the time see people carry it. And he said it was strange to him. You know what? They're used to that. They're used to that. When the sirens go off and the missiles are coming, they know what to do. They hide. They say, oh, this is a daily thing. We deal with this all the time. See, we ought to be grateful we don't have to deal with that. But you know what happens when that comes about? There's fear that sets in. There's fear that sets in. And every time you hear that, and all of a sudden you get nervous. And every time you hear that, you look around like, oh, what am I going to do? And all that fear. And you can be worried when you go out of town and you hear all that, well, that's the worst place in the country. It's the most dangerous city in America. Go there, we're going to do this, and we're going to, then you have some people that they got their head in the sand and everything's good, and people being shot at right behind them, and they don't have any idea what's going on. They're clueless as to what's going on. I don't believe we ought to have our head in the sand, but we got to be careful not to walk around in fear. He said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I will fear no evil. The valley of the shadow of death, again, that's where we're at. Every time we turn around, they have statistics for how many people die every minute, how many people die per day, and they'll break it down as whether they just died or whether they whatever may have happened, and they have all those statistics, and it's amazing to me how many people die every single day. They just die every single day, whether it's being shot at, whether they've been in war, whatever. But they're dead. They're no longer here. And then they've got statistics somebody's born every 10 minutes, and I don't know what they are. It's crazy numbers when you start thinking about it. It's absolutely crazy numbers to think, how in the world are we going to fit that many people in? Well, because if you got somebody being born every 10 minutes and somebody dying every 10 minutes, they're just replacing each other. And so you're dealing with all those things, and you look around and all the craziness that goes on, and you look around and you think, man, well, listen, I'm not afraid of this. I'm not afraid of that. We better pay attention to what's going on. All right, we're in a world that's wicked. We're in a world that is wicked and ungodly, and you got to protect your children, and you got predators out there, and all the ones that everybody know, oh, you need to let them all come across the border, and they're all good people. Well, there ain't no job, there's no place on the planet that you can go to and say everybody's a good person. All right, you better be real careful with that. And if you're dumb enough to believe that, then let them come live with you. All right, if you let them come live with you, if you want to do it, I don't. They're human trafficking. They're bringing people and they're selling them to other people. That's pretty wicked. That's the valley of the shadow of death. That is. You got to be real careful. You see it all the time. People say, well, they had their daughter went shopping at Target, and all of a sudden the van pulled up and they threw her in there and they can't find her, and they catch them and they take off with them, and you find out later on down the road they either killed them or they sold them to somebody. That's the mess that we're dealing with in this world. It happens every single day. It happens every single day. We just don't know about it. We don't pay attention to it. We're not aware of those things that go on. He said, well, I don't believe that. Well, you don't have to believe it if you don't want to, but you better be real careful of it. You better be real careful. He said, Daniel, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. That's what we're doing on a daily basis. From the minute you're born, you're one step closer to death. From the very minute that you're born. Now, that can be depressing. All right, you look at that and say, well, we were joking about age and was talking about how grateful I was that we got them from little bitty to old folks and how grateful I am for that. The reality is you start looking at that, you start counting those years and you start going, I think they say the average age of the American male is 74 years. It used to be 74. It might be less than that now, but it's 74 years old. All right? So, Brother Porter, Brother Atwood, you thought you guys are just average. You guys are better than average at something. Right? You're better than average at something. You made it beyond. So anything beyond that, you got to count as a bonus, right? And if you allow the fear to set in, allow it to pay attention to a lot of stuff, you're looking at that and you're thinking, well, I'm done young. I don't know. I'm just going to not do anything. I ain't supposed to be here now. Listen, you got to keep living life. You can't look at it and say, well, I'm beyond what I should be, and it's a blessing, and I'm good enough with this. You got to keep living until the Lord calls us out of here. Right? There's no place for us to retire. We are to serve Him until He comes and gets us. Now, again, I understand as we get older, we slow down a little bit. We can't do everything we used to do, at least not for the same amount of time we used to do it. I understand all that, and I'm getting more of an understanding on a daily basis. Right? Lord used to tell me all the time, and generally when I wake up in the morning, I'm reminded that I'm not 18 anymore. My alarm clock goes off, I get up, and her alarm clock goes off. Hers sounds different than mine. Mine goes, doot, 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 doot. I get up out of bed, and she hears hers going, that's me getting up out of bed, and that's what she hears in the morning. But listen, we're going to deal with that stuff, and it can be depressing. Somebody said when your kids get old, as you have kids, you only have 52. I don't know what it is. They got a weird number. It's a very low number. All right, you got 18 vacations with them, and I'm thinking, well, when the kids are little, I'm taking my kids when they grow up, we're still going on vacation with them, right? But the reality is, if you look at that, that's not very many vacations, is it? That's not very much time. Time goes fast. One of the guys at work, him and his wife just had their first baby, and he was talking to one of the other guys, a little bit older than him, not much older than him, but he had a son at a young age, and I say young age, he was 20 when he had him, but he took him off to college. Took him off to visit a college and left him there for the weekend. And they were talking about the story. I said, just remember. And I looked at the one that just had the baby. I said, you just remember this because tomorrow you're going to be doing what he did yesterday. He said, you mean tomorrow? I said, that's what it's going to feel like. It goes quickly. It goes quickly. It just seemed like just yesterday you're bringing them home and you're holding them in your hand. And they're big enough to hold right there. You can hold. I remember just holding them like this, and sitting in the chair. And you can go shopping this afternoon, huh? You go do whatever you got to do. I'll take care of it. And all we did is sleep. She's gone, we'd sleep. I'd hold them in the arm, and we'd sleep. And they don't do that anymore. One, I can't hold them in my arms anymore. All right, it don't work that way. I can assure you, at least one of them's going to go shopping. She'd rather do that than sleep. All right, sleep next to me in the chair. And so it goes quickly. It goes quickly. All right, but we can't live life in fear. Right? You can't live life. He said he gave us not the spirit of fear, but of might, power and might, sound mind. He gave us sound. You know what sound mind? You know why he gave us a sound mind? So we don't fall for the stupidity of the rest of the world. That we don't fall for all that garbage, and that we don't buy into all that stuff that they tell us, and all this every time just because somebody says it doesn't make it true. All right, if it goes contrary to the Word of God, then he said, well, you just don't like liberal things. You're right, I don't. I'm smarter than that. I'm smarter than that. And listen, I've got Bible to back that up. Times and seasons are going to remain until he comes back. That's what the Bible says. until he comes back. So that tells me that the climate's going to change. 4 times a year, that's the seasons. Winter, spring, summer, and fall, right? That's what we learned that. We learned that before we got into school. Learned all that stuff, and so we did. Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. We see the perils of life here in the first part of this, but he said, I'll fear no evil. Why is that? He doesn't just make the statement that I'll fear no evil. You know, and I tell this story, I know I've told it several times. There are things that you do to try to make yourself brave. When I was a young man, when I was a little boy, I would do things to try to make me feel brave and make sure I demonstrated that I was brave, even though I was scared to death. And my grandma and grandpa Foster, they had the creepiest basement. Y'all remember the movie? I think it was the first one, Home Alone. Y'all remember that? It's screaming. Remember he'd go down the basement. They had that little furnace down there, and he made it sound like he was talking and it scared him to death. And he'd go down there and he had to do it because he was by himself. And he'd go down and he faced that fear. He went down there and did it, and then come back, and then it showed reality. He looked and it was just there. Wasn't anything to be afraid of. I remember my grandma and grandpa Foster. They had it was a dungeon, is what it was. It was the creepiest basement you ever been in. And in the back of the stairs, you go down the landing. There's a little bathroom over here. You turn this way, and there's like 5 or 6 steps that you go down. In the back of those stairs were opened up. And he had a junk room. He had stuff. I mean, he'd go to yard sale and buy somebody else's junk and just store it. Never did anything with it, but he kept it. But when you go down there, the lights weren't on, and it's dingy. It smelled like musky from the old leaky basements. And you go down there, and so I just, for some reason in my mind, probably because when I was 4, they took me to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I won't use that as an excuse. But I go down the steps, and as I'm going down there, everybody else is upstairs. I'm going down there, and I start yelling, just in case somebody's down there, that they know I'm coming. I don't want to startle anybody. I said, now I'm going to go down the basement, and I'm going to get that, all right? And I'd stomp. And I'd make all the noise I possibly could going down there. Why? Because I was scared to death. And why are you making all that noise? Because if it's somebody that's not supposed to be there, they don't want to get caught. They're going to hide. They won't bother me. They know that I'm coming. But if I startle them, they're going to have to leave no witnesses, if you know what I'm saying. And so that's in my mind. I go down. And so I go down there, and as quick as I could, and as loud as I could, I run over and I click a light on. I'd go through and pull in the string, and I'd turn all those lights on. And I only needed to go right here. I was making sure I didn't see. Man, I was scared to death. I was scared to death. And then as you get older, all right, you get older, you go down that basement, and you're like, it still stunk. It was still dingy looking. But I wasn't worried that anybody was down there. Why? Because that was an irrational fear. One, nobody could get in that basement unless they come through the house. But you have those fears, and you do it. And so what I did is I'm making sure that they know I'm here. And if I stalked real loud, I sounded bigger than I was. Right? If I sounded like a grown up, and I would talk like, you could, hey, look, and make yourself brave. Well, I couldn't have done anything. If there's a grown man down there, he would just squash me like a bug. I was a little big guy. I couldn't do anything. But I had that fear. You have that fear. He said, yet I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. That's a great statement to make. How often I say, man will say, why are you yelling? Are you afraid? I'm not afraid of nothing, Mama. I'm not. Why would I be afraid? There's nothing down here. I was scared to death, but I didn't want her to know I was afraid. What I didn't need is some old lady laughing at me because I was scared. All right, I was afraid. But it's easy to make that statement. I'm not afraid. But if she had said, why are you not afraid? I couldn't have gave her an answer. Why? Because I was afraid. I couldn't have gave an answer why I wasn't afraid. I said, well, because I'm tough. I can handle this. He said, I will fear no evil. Why is that? Why will you fear no evil? For thou art with me. All right, he goes into great detail here why we shouldn't be afraid. He said, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. It's pretty comforting. You know what? What's comforting when you get a little bit nervous and you're worried about when you get in an area where you're not really sure. And you got all these people that what kind of unsavory characters, and you say, well, they might have a gun. You feel more comfortable if they've got a gun, if you got one with you, right? If you got one with you, if you typically, we worked at a job down in on Gilbert and Taft, and in the 2-year period that we worked in that job, 3 people were killed at lunchtime. They were mugged and they got killed. One guy got robbed. He was bending over to get a pop out of the pop machine. The guy reached in and grabbed his wallet out of his back pocket, ripped his pants, and stabbed him in the kidney. They bled out before the police and paramedics got there. Another one at Wendy's, they had a shootout and they shot somebody in the lunch. They were in line getting lunch and they were shooting somebody else, but they got them. And I think the other one was at Wendy's too. But they were in the 2-year period. There were 3 people killed at lunchtime. They went to work like any other day. And after the first one happened, what I started doing was I started carrying on the job. I started carrying on the job. Now, you couldn't conceal carry without a permit, but you could open carry. And Dad got real nervous about that. He said, why? And he said, Jim, I'd rather you not carry it open like that. He said, if you do that, people think you're looking for a gunfight. I said, well, it's not the Wild West. What I was doing was, I was saying, hey, look, if you're going to mug somebody, I'm probably not the guy to do it to. You know what they're not going to do? If they see a gun on your side, they're not coming to mug you. But if there's 7 other guys that are with you and none of them have a gun, they got 7 other options that they got that are a lot better than the guy that might shoot them back. And Dad's like, I just don't want you. And I explained to him why I was doing it, and he wasn't against guns. He just didn't like the idea that he thought I was, somebody might think I'm looking for. I said, it's not the Wild West. They're not sitting down there to see who's the quickest. They're wanting to get something quick, get out of there. They don't want to be caught. They don't want any trouble. They just want to get their money and leave. And so I did that. And what that was is, that was my rod, my staff. Now, it's wonderful if you've got that, and it's a great idea to protect. I think anybody that's comfortable with a gun ought to carry a gun. I'm all for that. Somebody says, preacher, I don't like that idea. Then don't carry it. I'm not yelling at you if you don't do it, but I'm telling you, I think it's a good idea. It is good to have protection. You know what it does? You know what it does for a 5'1", 110-pound older lady? It evens out the odds. It evens out the odds. She ain't going to be able to whoop that guy, but she can shoot him. All right? There's a little bit more comfort in that when she knows she's got that in her purse. All right? Now, I'm not telling you to trust in your strength and to trust in your abilities. I'm not doing it. That's not what I'm saying. I trust in him more than I do my ability to shoot somebody. And I trust in him more than my ability to defend myself. All right? I'm very comfortable in my ability to defend myself. But unlike television, if there's 12 guys, unless I've got that weapon with me, I'm probably not going to come out of that fight ahead. I know Bruce Lee can do it and all those guys. That's television. All right? He fought a bunch of dumb people. What do you mean? Because he only fought them one at a time. If there's 12 guys and they're going after one guy, if they're smart, they're all 12 going to get that guy at one time. They're not going to go, okay, let me let you beat that guy up first and then I'm coming after you. That's not the way it works. They're coming after you. They're going to get you. And if you've got a weapon, if you've got a gun, all it takes is to shoot that first one. Ain't none of them going to be brave enough to stand around and fight you then. They're going to scatter. They're going to scatter. And so we look at that and we say, okay, I'm comforted in the fact that I can take care of myself. I'm comforted in the fact that if something happens, we gave 1 year for Christmas, I gave all the ladies a taser. We got a taser. And that is made a little bit more comfortable. So I think it was Mom that had it on and she didn't know it. She stuck her hand in her purse and zapped herself. Now, that's not what it was for, right? They wasn't comfortable with that, but you did that so that they had something to comfort them. And so again, he said, yeah, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and every single day that you walk out of your house, there's an opportunity for somebody to do you harm. I ain't trying to scare you. All right, but that's the reality of it. Not everybody out there is looking to help you and to be kind to you. All right, there's people out there that are looking to do you harm. We got enemies of our country. Everybody everybody wants the unicorns and rainbows all the time. It don't work that way. There are people that their ultimate goal is to destroy our country. All right, they're looking. Okay, we can't sit around and fear that all the time. What we got to do, there are some things that we don't have control of. We can't control it. Talk about driving all the time. If you're driving down that yellow line doesn't really stop anybody. All right, what it does is it guides you, and if you'll follow the guidelines, you'll be safe. But all it takes is one guy, Brother Gary, Miss Sharon learned that. One guy not paying attention or stoned out of his mind, did not stop his car from coming across, and he hit them head on. I don't care how tough you are, you can't stop that. I don't care how fast you are, you ain't stopping that. I don't care how many bullets you've got in your gun, you ain't stopping that car from coming across there. And Brother Gary carries. Didn't do him a bit of good in that situation, did it? See, so I'm not telling you to rely on yourself. The Bible tells us not to rely on man, not to put our trust in man or in the things of this world. We're to put our trust in Him, and that's what He said here. And that's what He said here in verse number 4. He said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow, I will fear no evil, because I'm tough enough to handle." That's not what He said. I will fear no evil because I got lots of good. That's not what He said. I will fear no evil because I'm married to the toughest guy he could do. That's not what He said. He said, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. He didn't put his confidence. Listen, King David did not put his confidence or his trust in his own army. Some of them were coming after him anyway. He dealt with that. He dealt with that situation. The only one that he could trust was God. He had no idea who was coming after him. He had no idea who, if his own son was trying to kill him, he knew he couldn't trust anybody else. But he said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," David felt that on a daily basis, "I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." Could have stopped right there. That would have been enough. But he goes into some specific detail. "For thou art with me." God is with me. Comfort me. He said, "I know that you'll take care of me. I'm comforted with your rod and your staff. I'm comforted in the fact that you'll be able to stop whatever's coming at me. You'll be able to protect me." That hedge of protection that the devil talked about Job had, that's what when you get saved, you got that hedge of protection about you. It's not just Job that had it. When the devil wants to come at you, he's got to go through the blood of Jesus to get to you. And by the way, he can't get to you permanently. He might be able to harm you a little bit. He might be able to do a little bit of damage, but he cannot have you. If you've been saved, he cannot get you. All right? The only way he's going to get to you is if he gets through God. He can't get through God unless he gives him permission. He said, "I'll fear no evil." I'm not worried about anything that's going to happen to me because you've got it under control. You've got it under control. He said, "For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." Listen, I went to school with, anytime the guys would pick on him and stuff, and I'd go in there and I'd defend him. I'd stand up for him and say, "Hey, knock that off. Don't bother him again." They'd, all right. When I wasn't around, they'd come after and I'd find out. I'd go talk to him again. Say, "Stop doing it." They stopped doing it. They'd leave him alone. And I went one day, and I saw him, and he was starting trouble. He was starting trouble when the guy defended himself to him. He said, "I'm going to go get Jim." I said, "You don't need to get Jim. He's right here." And I said, "I saw everything you just did." I said, "I'm going to tell him now not to." I said, "But I'm giving him permission that if you do that again, I promise him I won't come after him. I won't do anything to him." All right? Listen, we don't have free reign to do whatever we want to do and expect God's protection. Right? Listen, people read this at funerals and they do that, and it's a comforting thing. People at funerals, you do, but that's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. If you're not a child of God, that's not for you. That's not for you. And I know it's hard to hear that, and you don't want to say that at somebody's funeral. You don't want people, you try to comfort them. But the reality is they need to know that prior to that time, that these things don't apply to those that are not saved. They don't apply. He's not your father if you've not been saved. He's your creator. All right? We're not all brothers and sisters unless you've been saved. We're all God's creation, but we're not all God's children. The only ones that are God's children are the ones that are saved. And again, that's difficult for people to understand, but that's the reality of it. We see the perils of life. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. That protects you in the perils of life. The only way we get that protection is through Him. Why is that? I gave you examples, because we can't control everything. We can't control the weather. They're trying to, right? They got them, I know people don't believe this stuff, they got the airplanes squirting that stuff out in the air to try to control the climate and do all these different things and make it rain. And, they said, well, we've got the ability to make it rain. A little bit nervous about that. I don't know what it's raining. I don't know what they're putting in there to make it rain. I don't know that I want that stuff falling on me, whatever they're doing. They go back to the old days and the Indians could dance for or whatever and try to make it rain. I'll stick with the way Elijah did it there. It didn't rain for 3.5 years, and he called on God, and it did rain for 3.5 years. It rained again, and so that didn't rain 3.5 straight years, but it rained again. All right, you know what he did? He called on God. He called on the one that could take care of it. He called on the rainmaker himself. He called on the rain, and that's what David's saying here. He said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me." That the Creator, the God of heaven and earth, the King of kings and Lord of lords, the only one that can handle all that stuff. I won't be afraid of anything because you're with me. And He's only with you if you've been saved. And if you're living right now, if you're a child of God and you're not in the will of God, you're outside that hedge of protection. You're outside the hedge of protection. People say, well, that's a lot of work. It's not a lot of work. Just follow Him. Just listen to Him. He makes it easy. We don't have to even think about it. Just do what He says. Why is that? Because you can always trust Him. You can always count on Him. He's never going to steer you wrong. He's never going to put you in harm's way. Everything He does is for your benefit. You can always trust that He's got your best interest at heart. All right. Sorry, we're going to stop at verse number 4 there. Anybody got anything on their heart?
Thank God for being here tonight, and just again, for all His blessings, what He does each day, all His mercies are new. A friend of mine from Somerset posted something this morning, and I told her, I said, it's wonderful that, you may have a bad day one day, and the next day, the day's gone, and can start all over and my day, I had one day was stupid. But then the next morning, His mercies were all new, and our day was new. So, I thought, okay, devil, you're not gonna, today's not your day. And, so I had a better day. And that's what we were kind of talking about, that God will give us strength in whatever we endure. He will give us strength. Strength to endure it.
Amen.
I thank Him again for all. And I was going to
Anybody else? All right. That says anything don't believe. Service Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. Invite somebody to come be with you. We'll stay at your liberty to go till then. Go pray and come pray.